St. John. Welcome to the Post Sermon Podcast. I am Deaconess Dahlia, and with me today is Vicar Tim.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing great. So we are going to discuss your sermon from this past Sunday. What was the text that you preached on?
So the text was John 8, 31 through 36, but this sermon was a little more thematic than focusing solely on the text, but that was the primary text, I suppose.
Right, so you said it was John 8, and what is Jesus saying in that text?
Yeah, he's saying that there is truth and that the truth is what sets you free from sin. And of course, being set free from sin also means being set free from death. And the implication, of course, is that Jesus himself is the truth that sets us free. Of course, the Jews that he's talking to aren't necessarily agreeing with him. They think that they're already free simply because they're children of Abraham.
Yeah, their response is always really funny to me. We've never been enslaved to anyone, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. I've been just thinking about where they came from. Like, very much their people had been enslaved. And even then, it's not like they really had true freedom of just being like under the Roman government, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the charitable reading of their words is that they're thinking that they've always been spiritually free, but that irony definitely appears whether that's what's intended or not.
Yes, the irony is thick there. Okay, well, I actually, before we get into your sermon, this might be a fair place because we talked about readings, and you mentioned this is what you preached on was the gospel. Can you tell us what the other readings are? Because this has to do with a hearer-submitted question.
Yeah, so the first reading today was from Sunday was from Revelation 14, and the second reading was from Romans 8.
Okay, so you mentioned the first reading as Revelation. So the question here is, why is the first reading from Revelation instead of the Old Testament on this Sunday?
Yeah, so a common thing in feast days is that the readings can get switched up a little bit, especially adding something from Revelation. It's not an uncommon occurrence, and in fact, this upcoming weekend for All Saints' Day, our first reading is from Revelation chapter 7. Obviously, fitting the theme of end times, we're going to see the great multitude of the saints. As to why Revelation 14 is chosen for Reformation Sunday, there's a couple of different things that I've heard. One is that this was the text that was preached down at Martin Luther's funeral. And a second one is that a number of the reformers understood this passage to be about Martin Luther, and that the angel that is there preaching an eternal gospel to all the earth has been identified with Martin Luther. Now, whether this interpretation is right or not, I don't really know, but that's one that's been offered up in the past, and so that's why one of the reasons why perhaps this reading became the appointed reading for Reformation Day.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And yeah, that's interesting what you said. So this past Sunday, Reformation Sunday, and now All Saints Day, which we're observing on Sunday. Though, fun fact, you guys, we are recording on the actual All Saints Day today, November 1st. But anyways, both of those Sundays you mentioned have Revelation readings. Do you by chance know if there are other Sundays that have readings that are not Old Testament?
Let's see. In the 3-year lectionary, it's quite frequent in the season of Easter. We get a lot of readings from Acts. Other feasts and festivals will sometimes have readings from Revelation or Acts, especially if it's a reading that involves, say, a particular saint. Like we have reading from Acts for the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, because that's where both of them are quite prominent, and they're working together at that point, I believe.
Yeah, that's really good, because otherwise we're not going to get the book of Acts in the typical lectionary, right? For Sundays. So it's a good time to have it. Well, very good. That's interesting. Okay, so let's get back to your sermon. What was your central teaching in the sermon?
Yeah, so my central teaching was that Jesus, the capital T truth, sets us free from sin and from death. And so in a world where, people want to mess with the truth a lot, they want to change up the story of the Bible to fit the way they want it to be, there's just this reminder that there is this one truth in Jesus, that he died on the cross for us, he rose from the dead so that we would live forever. And we can't get away from that truth. We can't mess with that truth. And death is a reality that everyone has to face. And I think I really just wanted to bring out that kind of idea that we all have to deal with that specific truth. And so, well, how do we answer that question and of what happens to us after death? That was what I was trying to focus in on.
Yeah, you brought up the Choose Your Own Adventure books, right?
Yes.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the point of that was, we can't choose, like everyone's ending is that problem that we're wrestling with is that we're all going to die one day. So if you don't believe in Jesus, or, you choose to ignore that, or, that kind of thing, like you're eventually going to have to come face to face with that reality. Was that part of it?
Yeah. And especially because like the specific type of Choose Your Own Adventure book I went with, it's, based off Return of the Jedi. We all know how, if you've seen the movies, you all know how Return of the Jedi ends, but this book allows you to completely change up the ending if you'd like. And so I guess I was trying to make this connection with, changing up the ending that we all know. We all have to reckon with the fact that death is an ending. And so what do you do when you die? What happens to you when you die? Everyone has to answer that question, whether they believe in the Bible or not. And we, of course, have a truth in that. A truth that when we die, it's not an ending. It's not something that we need to even, I guess, be afraid of, because we know we'll be with Jesus and that we will live with him forever and the new heavens and the new earth.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I'm wondering too, as Christians, like maybe unless you are actively dealing with death on like a day-to-day basis, it's something a lot of us maybe, even though we know we're going to die, it's something we don't think about as much every day, right?
Yeah. I don't go around every day thinking about my own mortality 24/7.
Right. But yeah, no, even so, but you also like work at a church, so maybe you are still thinking about it more than others, but maybe not. Yeah. I don't know. Like, but I know what you mean, like for myself as well. But yeah, so even those who believe in Jesus, it's good for us maybe to remember that, yeah, we too are going to have to reckon with the fact that one day we will die. But then we're connected to Jesus, so it's not it's not like death is going to get the final word, right?
Yeah. We have a hope and that others don't have.
Right, and like you said too, which is the focus of your sermon, that Jesus is freeing us from that death. It's not going to be that end of our story.
Yeah.
How did you intend to benefit your hearers in their faith or life?
Yeah, so we're all going to come across people who fit some of these examples I made in my sermon of people who are changing up the story of the Bible a bit. The people who want to make it all about, well, here's all the things you have to do now, like the Bible's just a list of rules for you to follow. Or the people who like the nice little teachings and sayings of Jesus, but don't believe that, the important stuff, the resurrection, even happened, or who just ignore anything they don't like. And then, of course, the person who just flat out says, well, that's all a bunch of nonsense. We're all going to come across those people at some point in our lives. And I guess, how do we talk to those people? How do we bring them to the actual truth? And I think that the fair question that we can ask these people is, well, what happens to you when you die? And, You'll probably get a range of responses, and then you get to tell them the gospel. And I think that's a great segue into getting to share the actual true story of the gospel and not maybe the misplaced version that they had in their minds.
Yeah, no, I really like that. Sometimes I hear this from people, like when someone dies, that you'll hear that person still lives on, right? Like in their hearts, or you see something in nature. It's like, oh, that's that person, like trying to tell me something. And I don't know, like that always makes me think of, well, there is something about us that just doesn't seem like we are supposed to die. Like we're supposed to, it's almost like we were created just to like live forever. And so even though maybe they're saying the wrong thing and that person's not in that, breeze or in the tree or whatnot, but I don't know, I think it is a testament that they're wrestling with the fact that this life was cut off, and like that's not how it's supposed to be. Like we want to be able to, it's like we can just tell almost that we're just supposed to live forever, right? And like you said, we have that message of hope that we can give them something better than this person living in your heart, but we can actually give them like Jesus lives.
Yeah.
And we're going to live again one day.
Yeah.
And what a solid message just to like you said, like put our hope in.
Yeah. So. Yeah. It's because of what Jesus did, not because of what we're doing. It's because of what Jesus did.
Exactly. Well, very good. This wraps up our episode for today. Thank you for listening to this discussion. In case you missed the sermon or you'd like to listen to it again, the link to the sermon's in the show notes, and you can also find it on our website, stjohndublin.org. If you, the listener, would like to submit a question about a sermon, please email us at podcast@stjohndublin.org. Thank you, Vicar, for joining me and for feeding us the word this week.
My pleasure.
Great. Take care, you guys. Bye.
Bye.